"Baxter, no!" Arya Vaughan shouted as she chased after the golden retriever who had just stolen a glazed donut from the display case, knocking over 3 coffee cups in the process. "Come back here, you furry demon!" The dog stopped at the door of Love and Brew coffee shop, wagged his tail as if to say thanks for the snack, and bolted down the tree-lined street of El Monte. Arya stood there breathless, holding a broom, and wearing an expression that mixed irritation with desperation. "That dog is going to be the death of me," she muttered, staring at the scattered pieces on the floor. It was the 3rd time this week that the mischievous golden retriever had invaded her coffee shop, and she was beginning to suspect he had an internal timer programmed for the busiest hours. "Let me help with that," said a masculine voice behind her. Arya turned around and found a man in his mid-30s with slightly tousled brown hair, wearing cargo shorts and a faded cotton t-shirt. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place what. "Thanks, but I've got it," she replied, trying to regain her dignity while sweeping up the pieces. "I'm just wondering if this Baxter has an owner or if he's an autonomous agent of chaos." The man smiled, and Arya noticed he had a genuine smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. "Actually," he began, scratching his neck awkwardly, "he's mine." Arya stopped sweeping and stared at him with an expression that could melt steel. "Yours?" Her voice went up 3 octaves. "You're the owner of that walking catastrophe?" "I'm Nicholas Watkins, and I apologize for his enthusiasm," he said, extending his hand. "Can I pay for the damages?" "For the damages?" Arya ignored the extended hand. "Mr. Watkins, your dog doesn't just cause damage. He orchestrates a complete canine apocalypse. Yesterday he ran off with the tablecloth from the main table in his mouth, like he was wearing a superhero cape. Emma, the 22-year-old barista who was always glued to soap operas on her phone, appeared from the kitchen with a mischievous smile. "Hi, Nicholas, the usual?" she asked, winking conspiratorially. "The usual?" Arya repeated, incredulous. "You two know each other?" "He's been coming here for about 3 weeks, Emma explained, preparing an espresso without even asking. "Always orders the same thing, double-shot coffee, no sugar, and a slice of Mrs. Rose's cinnamon roll." Nicholas took the cup, avoiding Arya's penetrating gaze. "I just like the coffee here." "Of course," Arya said sarcastically. "And does your refined taste for coffee have anything to do with the fact that your dog has developed a special talent for invading exactly this coffee shop?" The truth was that Nicholas had first stopped by Love and Brew by chance 3 weeks ago, looking for a quiet place to work on a campaign. But the moment he saw Arya arguing with the espresso machine, letting out creative curse words that would make a sailor blush, he knew he wanted to get to know her better. The problem was that he had never been good at direct approaches. That's when Baxter entered the plan. "Look," Nicholas said, placing $20 on the table, "for today's damages, and I promise to have a serious talk with him about social behavior." "Talk?" Arya arched an eyebrow. "With a dog? It's very smart," Nicholas defended. "Sometimes I think he understands everything I say. If you only knew how much," he thought, remembering how he had trained Baxter to be irresistibly disastrous whenever they passed by the coffee shop. Mrs. Rose, Arya's grandmother, appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray of freshly baked cinnamon rolls. "Who's this charming young man, dear?" she asked, with a mischievous smile that betrayed decades of experience as a cupid. "Mrs. Rose, this is Nicholas," Arya said resignedly, "the owner of the terrorist dog." "Ah, the famous Baxter," the elderly woman laughed. "That little angel who yesterday helped me draw attention to the new pastry when he knocked down the sign right in front of the customers?" Arya looked at her grandmother as if she had lost her mind. "Grandma, he wasn't helping. He was being himself." "Sometimes," Nicholas said with an enigmatic smile, "the best things happen when we least expect them." And it was exactly at that moment that Baxter reappeared, running straight toward Nicholas, but not before knocking over a potted plant at the entrance. "Perfect," Arya sighed. "Now he's back to complete his masterpiece." 3 days later, Arya was determined to have a peaceful morning. She had arrived early at the coffee shop, checked all the planters, locked the back door, and even sprayed a dubious natural dog repellent at the entrance, a questionable recipe she had found online. "Today you won't catch me off guard, Baxter," she muttered, organizing the pastries in the display case. That's when she heard the door chime and turned, expecting to see the first customer of the day. Instead, she found Nicholas standing at the entrance, holding a leash in his hand and wearing an embarrassed expression. "Good morning, Arya. I came to apologize again and, well, propose a truce." "A truce?" she repeated suspiciously. "What kind of truce?" Nicholas approached the counter, and Arya noticed he smelled of a discreet and expensive cologne, nothing consistent with his simple clothes. "How about I help with the repairs that Baxter causes, in exchange for you letting me drink coffee here in peace?" "In peace?" Arya let out a dry laugh. "Your dog has turned my coffee shop into a canine amusement park, and you want to drink coffee in peace?" "Look here," Emma said, appearing from the kitchen with her phone in hand. "You two arguing again. This is starting to look like a primetime soap opera." "Nobody asked for your opinion, Emma," Arya grumbled. "But I'm going to give it anyway," the barista replied, smiling. "Nicholas, can you really not control Baxter, or are you doing it on purpose?" Nicholas almost choked on his own saliva. Emma's question was dangerously perceptive. "Why would I do it on purpose?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "I don't know," Emma shrugged. "Maybe because you like coming here?" The silence that followed was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Rose, who observed the scene with the experienced eye of someone who had lived through many stories. "Nicholas, dear, do you have family here in El Monte?" she asked in the apparently casual tone of someone conducting an investigation. "I have some relatives, but I live alone," he replied. "In Arcadia, near the foothills." "Alone in a house near the foothills?" Arya arched an eyebrow. "Must be expensive." Nicholas felt his heart race. He had mentioned Arcadia without thinking, and now he needed to improvise. "It's a simple house, family inheritance," he lied, remembering the modern mansion he had bought the previous year. "And what do you do for work?" Mrs. Rose persisted. "Advertising," Nicholas replied, technically telling the truth, but nothing too sophisticated. Arya studied him for a moment. There was something about him that didn't add up. The simple clothes contrasted with his confident posture, and he spoke about work too vaguely. "Advertising," she repeated. "What kind?" "Local campaigns. Small stuff," Nicholas said, growing increasingly uncomfortable. "And you? Have you always wanted to own a coffee shop?" "It was my mother's dream," Arya replied, her voice becoming softer. "She died 2 years ago, and I promised it'd continue what she started." The change in Arya's tone caught Nicholas off guard. Suddenly, he felt like a complete idiot for lying to someone who clearly valued honesty and genuine relationships. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "She would be proud to see what you've built here." "Thank you," Arya murmured, and for a moment they looked at each other in silence. That's when Baxter burst through the door, barking happily and running straight toward Nicholas, but not before bumping into Olivia, who had just entered the coffee shop. "What the hell is this?" Olivia shouted, looking at the muddy paw prints on her impeccable suit. "Olivia, this is my sister," Arya said quickly. "Olivia, this is Nicholas, the acquaintance." "Acquaintance?" Olivia looked Nicholas up and down disapprovingly. "Are you the owner of this beast?" "Sorry," Nicholas said, holding Baxter by the leash. "He's excited." "Excited?" Olivia turned to Arya. "Arya, we need to talk. In private." The two stepped away, and Nicholas couldn't help but hear when Olivia whispered, "What kind of man can't control his own dog? And those clothes? He looks like a perpetual teenager." "He's not that bad," Arya defended, surprising herself. "Arya, you need a responsible man. Someone like Gilbert." "Not Gilbert," Arya said categorically. Nicholas felt a strange pang, hearing another male name in the conversation. Who was this Gilbert? As if the universe were reading his thoughts, the door opened again, and in walked a man in a suit, slicked back hair, and a commercial smile. "Hello, Arya," he said, kissing her cheek more intimately than Nicholas would have liked. "How's business?" "Gilbert," Arya replied without much enthusiasm. What do you want? I came to renew my offer. My investors are still interested in expanding the coffee shop. We could turn this into a franchise. And I already told you I'm not interested. Gilbert noticed Nicholas and Baxter in the corner. And who's this? New boyfriend? He asked with a disdainful tone. No, Arya said quickly. He's just a customer. The word just hurt Nicholas more than he would have liked to admit. A week later, Arya began to notice a strange pattern. Nicholas appeared always during the busiest times. Baxter caused exactly the right kind of commotion to draw customer attention, and he always paid generously for the damages. Even more suspicious, the dog never invaded other stores on the street. "Emma," she said on a Saturday morning, "don't you think it's weird that Baxter only causes problems here?" "I do," the barista replied without looking up from her phone. "By the way, did you see the photos they posted of us on Instagram? There's one where Nicholas is helping you clean the table. You two looked cute." "Photos? What photos?" Arya snatched the phone from Emma's hands. "I didn't authorize this." On the screen was a series of stories from the account I Love and Brew El Monte. Arya smiling while serving coffee, Baxter posing next to a slice of cake, and in the last one, a photo of her and Nicholas sharing a laugh while cleaning up spilled coffee. "Who's posting this?" Arya asked. "I don't know," Emma shrugged. "The account appeared about 3 weeks ago. Pretty mysterious, right? 3 weeks, exactly when Nicholas started frequenting the coffee shop. "Mrs. Rose," Arya called, "do you know anything about this Instagram account?" Her grandmother appeared from the kitchen with a smile too innocent to be true. "Instagram? I can barely use WhatsApp, dear." But Arya noticed her grandmother looked away too quickly. At that moment, Nicholas entered the coffee shop, but without Baxter. Arya immediately became suspicious. "Where's your accomplice?" she asked. "Baxter is grounded," Nicholas replied. "Yesterday he destroyed my garden chasing a cat." "Wait," Arya said, narrowing her eyes. "You have a garden?" Nicholas realized he had slipped up again. His house in Arcadia had landscaping that cost more than many apartments. "A small backyard," he corrected quickly. "Nothing fancy." Arya murmured, clearly suspicious. Emma watched them as if she were watching a particularly interesting soap opera. "Nicholas," she said suddenly, "can I ask an indiscreet question?" "Sure," he replied, already fearing the worst. "Why doesn't a guy who lives alone in a house in the foothills and works in advertising have a trainer for his dog?" The silence that followed was deafening. Nicholas began, but was interrupted when Olivia entered the coffee shop like a hurricane. "Arya, you need to see this," she said, waving a tablet. "Gilbert made a formal investment proposal. $100,000 to expand the business. And I already said I don't want partners," Arya replied. "Arya, be rational," Olivia insisted. $100,000. You could open a second location, hire more employees." Nicholas heard the amount and almost laughed. $100,000 was what he spent on a single medium-sized advertising campaign. But for Arya, it was clearly a significant amount. "And what does Gilbert want in return?" Mrs. Rose asked, always pragmatic. 50% of the partnership and—" Olivia hesitated. "Some changes to the concept. He wants to modernize, expand the menu, maybe change the name." "Change the name?" Arya's voice came out like a roar. "This place is called Love and Brew because of my mother. She used to say that coffee without love is just hot water." "Arya, you need to think about the future," Olivia said. "Gilbert has connections, capital, and I have principles." Arya cut her off. Nicholas stood up abruptly. "Excuse me," he said. "I need to go." Arya watched him leave with a strange expression on his face, almost frustrated. "See," Olivia said, "even the corner boyfriend realizes you're being stubborn." "He's not my boyfriend," Arya protested. "No?" Mrs. Rose arched an eyebrow. "Then why do you blush every time he leaves?" Arya looked in the mirror behind the counter and found that her grandmother was right. Her cheeks were flushed. "That's the heat," she lied. "Of course it is," Emma said, smiling. "The heat of passion." "Emma." "What?" Everyone here can see it except you. The man comes here every day, pays for the dog's damage, keeps looking at you with that lovesick expression." "What expression?" Arya asked, interested despite herself. "That expression of someone who's hiding something," Emma said. "Like in soap operas, when the leading man is rich but pretends to be poor to win the heroine." Arya gave a sarcastic laugh. "Emma, that only happens on television. In real life, men are exactly what they seem." "Really?" Mrs. Rose smiled mysteriously. "How nice that you're so sure, dear." But while Arya tried to convince herself that Nicholas was just an ordinary man with an impossible dog, he was a few blocks away, on the phone with his assistant. "Marcus, I need information about the Love and Brew coffee shop in El Monte. Financial situation, debts, everything. Any problem, Nicholas?" "No, Marcus. Actually, I think I finally found a good investment. The annual El Monte Street Festival was approaching, and Love and Brew had been chosen as one of the official coffee vendors for the event. Arya was excited, but also nervous. It was the first major exposure for the business since she had taken over. "We're going to need extra help," she told Emma on a Monday. "The festival expects over 2,000 people this weekend. How about asking Nicholas to help?" Emma suggested, with a mischievous smile. "He's already used to the chaos here." "I'm not going to ask favors from a customer," Arya said, but the idea wasn't entirely bad. As if he had heard the conversation, Nicholas entered the coffee shop, but this time accompanied by Baxter and an elegant woman in her 60s, with impeccable grey hair and clothes that clearly cost more than the coffee shop's monthly revenue. "Arya," Nicholas said, looking nervous, "I'd like you to meet my mother, Patricia." Patricia Watkins looked around with the critical eye of someone evaluating a work of art. "So this is the famous coffee shop," she said with an accent that betrayed years of living abroad. "Nicholas talks about it so much that I needed to see it in person." Arya suddenly felt self-conscious about her simple clothes and coffee-stained apron. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Patricia. Can I offer you something?" "A coffee, please. No sugar," Patricia said, sitting at the table by the window. "And one of those cinnamon roll slices my son praises so much." While Arya prepared the order, she heard Patricia whisper to Nicholas, "She's exactly as you described. Natural, authentic, completely different from those socialites your father insists on introducing." "Mum, please," Nicholas murmured. "What? I'm just observing," Patricia said, deliberately raising her voice. "It's rare to find a place with so much personality these days. Most coffee shops are all the same, soulless." Arya served the coffee and noticed that Patricia tried it with the seriousness of a sommelier. "Excellent," she declared. "Do you roast the beans here?" "No, we buy from a local supplier," Arya replied, "but we personally choose each batch." "Smart. Quality without losing local personality." The conversation was interrupted by the stormy arrival of a man in an expensive suit, grey hair, and a permanent expression of disapproval. "So this is where you've been spending your time," he said, looking at Nicholas with disdain. Arya saw Nicholas tense immediately. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to pick up your mother for the lunch you forgot," said Richard Watkins, casting a deprecating glance around the coffee shop, "and to meet this establishment that so fascinates you." The atmosphere became icy. Patricia sighed, clearly accustomed to her husband's rudeness. "Richard, be polite. This is Arya, the owner." Richard extended his hand mechanically. "Richard Watkins. I hope my son hasn't caused too much trouble with that dog of his." "Actually," Arya said, instinctively defending Nicholas, "he always takes responsibility for the small accidents." "Small accidents," Richard repeated sarcastically. "Nicholas has always been careless with responsibilities." The tension in the air was palpable. Emma pretended to be busy cleaning cups but didn't miss a word. "Dad, that's not necessary," Nicholas said, clearly embarrassed. "Isn't it? You're 35 years old, Nicholas. When do you plan to assume serious responsibilities?" "Richard, enough," Patricia said, but he ignored her. "Maybe," Richard continued, looking directly at Arya, "it's time for you to explain to this young woman who you really are. Don't you think that's fair?" Nicholas' heart raced. He saw the confusion on Arya's face and knew his house of cards was collapsing. "What is he talking about?" Arya asked, looking between father and son. That's when Ryan Watkins entered the coffee shop, smiling like a predator who had just found his prey. "So here's the whole family gathered," he said, hugging Richard. "And this must be the famous Arya who has kept my little brother so distant from business." "Ryan, please," Nicholas began, but was cut off. "Arya, right?" Ryan extended his hand with a fake smile. "Ryan Watkins, partner at Watkins and Associates Agency. Maybe you've heard of us? We do campaigns for practically all the major brands on the West Coast." Arya shook his hand automatically, but her brain was processing the information. "Watkins and Associates?" she repeated. "The advertising agency." "Exactly," Ryan said, clearly enjoying himself. "My dear brother Nicholas here is the creative director. CEO, actually. Very modest of him not to mention it, don't you think?" The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of a cup falling from Arya's trembling hands. "CEO?" she repeated, looking at Nicholas with an expression of disbelief and betrayal. "Arya, I can explain," Nicholas began. "Explain?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "You lied to me." "He didn't exactly lie," Ryan said maliciously. "He just admitted that he's a multimillionaire. Unimportant detail, right?" Mrs. Rose, who had observed everything in silence, finally spoke. "I think you'd better resolve this in private." But Arya was already taking off her apron. "There's nothing to resolve," she said with a broken voice. "Emma, can you close today?" And she left through the back door, leaving Nicholas alone with his family and the feeling that he had lost the only thing that truly mattered. 3 days passed without Nicholas appearing at the coffee shop. Arya told herself she was relieved, but the truth was that she felt a strange emptiness every time she heard the door chime and saw it wasn't him. "Are you going to stay sulky forever?" Mrs. Rose asked, placing a cup of coffee in front of her granddaughter. "I'm not sulky, I'm disappointed," Arya replied, stirring her coffee listlessly. "With him or with yourself?" "With him, obviously. He fooled me all this time." "Did he really fool you?" Mrs. Rose sat down beside her. "Or were you the one who didn't want to see?" Arya looked at her grandmother with irritation. "Grandma, for heaven's sake, he pretended to be an ordinary person when he's actually a millionaire." "And that changes what exactly? Didn't he continue being the same person you were getting to know?" "Of course it changes everything," Arya exploded. "People like him don't get interested in people like me. He must be having fun with the whole situation." Emma, who was organizing the tables, stopped to join the conversation. "Arya, with all due respect, you're being kind of dramatic." "Dramatic?" "Yes. The man came here every day, paid for the dog's damage, helped you with everything. If he wanted to have fun at your expense, he wouldn't put in so much effort." "He lied about who he was." "He didn't lie," Mrs. Rose said. "He omitted, which is quite different." "It's the same thing." "No, it's not," Emma interfered. "Lying would be if he had invented a fake profession. He just didn't tell the whole truth." Arya looked at the two women, as if they had conspired against her. "Are you defending him?" "We're defending love," Mrs. Rose said simply, "because anyone with eyes can see that you two like each other." "I don't like him." "No?" Emma arched an eyebrow. "Then why do you look at the door every time the bell rings?" Before Arya could answer, the bell rang again, and she automatically looked toward the entrance. But it wasn't Nicholas. It was Gilbert, with a triumphant smile and a briefcase in hand. "Arya, I heard you had some problems with unsuitable suitors," he said, sitting down uninvited. "I came to renew my investment proposal." "Gilbert, I'm not interested. Listen." He opened the briefcase and spread papers on the table. "I've reformulated everything. Now it's $150,000, and you keep 60% of the partnership." "No, Gilbert." "Arya, be rational. You just discovered that coffee guy deceived you. You need someone trustworthy by your side." "Nicholas isn't a loser," Arya said, surprising herself by defending him. "No. Then why did he lie about who he was?" Gilbert smiled maliciously. "Rich men don't play at being poor for no reason, Arya. He was having fun with you. Gilbert's words echoed exactly the fears Arya had been trying to ignore, and it was at that moment that Nicholas appeared at the door, but not alone. Baxter was with him, and also an elegant man in a suit. "Arya," Nicholas said, taking a deep breath, "I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about," she replied, but her voice didn't sound as firm as she would have liked. "We do. And this time, I'm going to tell you the whole truth." Gilbert stood up, visibly irritated. "Arya, I'm not going to stay here listening to this clown's excuses." "Then don't stay," Nicholas said without taking his eyes off Arya. "Marcus," he said to the man in the suit, "can you show Arya the documents?" Marcus extended a folder to her. "What is this?" Arya asked suspiciously. "The deed to the coffee shop," Nicholas said, "which is now in your name, free of any debt." The silence was deafening. Gilbert looked at the papers over Arya's shoulder. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I bought all the coffee shop's debts from the bank," Nicholas explained, "and transferred full ownership to Arya." "You did what?" Arya looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "I said I was going to tell you the whole truth." Nicholas took a deep breath. "My name is Nicholas Watkins. I'm 35 years old. I'm CEO of Watkins & Associates Agency. I have more money than I'll ever be able to spend in a lifetime, and I'm completely in love with you." "Nicholas, I'm not finished yet," he continued. "Baxter is uncontrolled by accident. I trained him to cause commotion here because it was the only excuse I could think of to come see you every day." Emma let out a muffled scream. "I knew it. Prime-time soap opera. You trained your dog to annoy me?" Arya didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "Yes, and I apologize for that too, but I didn't know how to approach you any other way. I've always been terrible with women, and you were, intimidating." "Intimidating?" Arya gave an incredulous laugh. "Me? Intimidating? You're intelligent, funny, determined, passionate about what you do. And I'm just a rich guy who never had to fight for anything in life." Gilbert cleared his throat loudly. "Very touching, but Arya, you need to think with your head. He deceived you, lied." "Gilbert," Mrs. Rose said, appearing from the kitchen with an expression that would make any intelligent man back down, "I think you'd better leave." "But now," she said in a tone that brooked no argument. Gilbert left grumbling something about irrational women, and Arya was left alone with Nicholas, looking at the documents in her hands. "Why did you do this?" she asked in a small voice. "Because you said your mother dreamed of this place, and I don't want you to have to choose between her dream and anything else." "Anything else?" Nicholas approached slowly, as if she were a frightened animal that might run away at any moment. "Between her dream and me. If you want to have something with me. And what exactly are you offering?" "Everything," he said simply. "My honesty, my time, my messy life, my impossible dog, and if you'll accept it, my heart too." Arya felt her eyes fill with tears. "Nicholas, I don't know. We're from completely different worlds." "Are we?" he smiled. "Because I look at you and see someone who gets up early to make coffee with love, who argues with a mischievous dog but deep down enjoys the confusion, who honors her mother's memory every day. That's your world, Arya, and it's exactly where I want to be. And if it doesn't work out, what if I can't fit into your life? Then, well, invent a new life," he said. "One that fits both of us." Baxter, who had stayed still the whole time, a miracle in itself, chose that moment to bark and run toward the display case. "Baxter, no!" Arya and Nicholas shouted at the same time, but the dog stopped right in front of the pastries, sat down, and looked at them with his tongue hanging out as if to say, "Done. I did my part. Now do you kiss or not?" Arya looked at Nicholas, then at Baxter, then back at Nicholas. "Your dog really is very intelligent," she said. "I told you he was. And you really trained him to irritate me?" "Technically, to get your attention. Irritating was an unintentional consequence." Arya took a step toward him. "Nicholas Watkins, you are completely crazy." "Yes," he smiled. "Is that a problem?" "It should be," she said, taking another step. "But apparently I have a weakness for crazy men with impossible dogs." "Apparently." Definitely, she corrected, and finally closed the distance between them. The kiss was interrupted by the enthusiastic applause of Emma and Mrs. Rose, who had watched everything from the kitchen. "Finally!" Emma shouted. "I was beginning to think you were never going to kiss." "And I was already planning to lock you two in the storage room," Mrs. Rose added. Baxter barked happily, and for the first time in weeks didn't knock anything over. Epilogue. 6 months later, Love and Brew had become the unofficial cultural center of El Monte. Not just because it served the best coffee in the region, but because it was impossible to pass by without witnessing some scene worthy of a soap opera. Today, for example, Baxter was helping Nicholas hang a sign on the wall, "Watkins Creativity School, coming soon to this neighborhood." The dog held one end of the measuring tape in his mouth with the seriousness of an engineer. "To the left," Arya said, watching from afar. "No, now to the right. Nicholas, you're crooked." "Am I crooked or is the wall crooked?" he asked with a concentrated expression that made Arya laugh. "Definitely you," Emma replied, now wearing an official badge reading Social Media Manager for Love and Brew. "And please, stay like that so I can take a photo. The followers love you too being cute." The Love and Brew El Monte account had become a local phenomenon, especially after it was discovered that Mrs. Rose was the mastermind behind the posts. The 78-year-old lady had revealed herself to be a natural-born digital influencer. "Grandma," Arya said, "I still can't believe you knew how to use Instagram all this time." "My dear, do you think you get to 78 without learning a few tricks?" Mrs. Rose replied, posting a story of Baxter supervising the construction. "Besides, someone needed to document this soap opera for posterity." The door opened, and in came Patricia Watkins, carrying a box of Portuguese pastries. "I brought pastéis de nata from Lisbon," she announced, "to celebrate the future business expansion." Patricia had moved permanently to the United States after her tumultuous divorce from Richard. Apparently, discovering that her husband had tried to sabotage their son's romance was the last straw in a marriage that had been hanging by a thread for years. "How are things with Ryan and your father?" Arya asked, hugging her mother-in-law. "Ryan finally understood he's not going to get Nicholas out of the company," Patricia replied. "And Richard? Well, he's learning that emotional blackmail doesn't work with adult children." The truth was that Nicholas had given his father and brother an ultimatum. Either they accepted his choices, or he would sell his part of the company and start his own business. Faced with the possibility of losing the most talented son in the family, Richard backed down. "And the school? How's the project going?" Patricia asked. "Amazing," Nicholas replied, coming down from the ladder. "We're going to start with photography, design, and creative writing workshops. Arya will coordinate a local entrepreneurship course." "Me?" Arya's eyes widened. "Nicholas, I could barely keep a coffee shop running." "Exactly," he said, kissing her forehead. "You know what it's like to fight for a dream. That's what people need to learn." Emma stopped photographing for a moment. "You know you're being too cute for a Monday afternoon, right?" "Is it Monday?" Arya asked. "I thought it was Saturday." "When you work with what you love, every day feels like the weekend," Nicholas said philosophically. "What a cliché phrase," Arya laughed. "You should put that in an advertising campaign." "I already did," he smiled, "in the campaign for our school." Baxter, who had managed to get tangled in the measuring tape, barked for help. Arya went to him and began untangling him, laughing. "You know the allergy still bothers me, right?" she said to the dog. "But I learned to take antihistamines every morning." "Are you sure you don't want me to find another home for him?" Nicholas asked for the 1,000th time. "Not a chance," Arya replied, scratching behind Baxter's ear. "He's the most efficient Cupid in California. And besides, he's become the official mascot here." As if understanding the compliment, Baxter straightened up and posed next to the pastry display, making Emma run to photograph. "Olivia should be arriving soon," Mrs. Rose said, looking at her watch. "How did she react to the engagement news?" Patricia asked. "Better than we expected," Arya replied. "She said she prefers a millionaire brother-in-law to a broke one." "Always practical, our Olivia," Nicholas laughed. The door opened again, and Olivia entered accompanied by a dark-haired man with glasses. "Everyone, I want you to meet David," she said, blushing slightly. "My boyfriend." The silence that followed was broken by Emma. Plot twist. The workaholic lawyer got herself a boyfriend. "Emma," Olivia protested, but she was smiling. "How did you two meet?" Arya asked curiously. "He's a literature professor at UCLA, Olivia explained. "We met at a lecture on copyright law." "How romantic," Nicholas said with a serious face. "Nothing better than copyright law to spark passion." David laughed. "Actually, I invited her for coffee after the lecture, and she brought me here. And I immediately knew he was good," Olivia added, "because Baxter liked him." "Baxter is now a personality test?" Arya asked. "Of course," Mrs. Rose said. "Dogs don't lie. If Baxter approves, it's because the person is good." "What about Gilbert?" Emma asked mischievously. "Did Baxter like him?" "Baxter growled at Gilbert," Arya remembered. "I should have paid attention to that." "Speaking of Gilbert," Nicholas said, "I heard he opened a coffee shop franchise in Pasadena. And how's it going?" "Badly," Nicholas replied with a smile. "Apparently coffee without love really is just hot water." Arya snuggled into his arm, watching the coffee shop full of dear people, the street movement outside, Baxter sleeping in the sun at the entrance. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I always thought I needed to protect this place from external invasions, and it turned out that the best thing that ever happened here was a mischievous dog invading my life." "And the dog's owner?" Nicholas asked. "Was that also a good invasion?" "The dog's owner," Arya said, turning to kiss him, "was the best surprise of my life. Even being a millionaire, especially being a millionaire," she laughed. "Because now I can keep you in the style you're accustomed to." "And what style is that?" "Coffee with love every morning, Mrs. Rose's cinnamon rolls, Baxter's chaos, and a girlfriend who's going to make you work hard to deserve every little kiss." "Best deal of my life," Nicholas said. And it was then that Baxter woke up, saw the couple kissing, barked happily, and knocked over the plant pot at the entrance. Some things never change. Did you enjoy this love story full of canine chaos and surprises? If you had fun following the adventures of Arya, Nicholas, and the mischievous Baxter, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Also hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new stories. This way you'll be helping other people, just like you, receive good stories like this one. After all, everyone deserves a little bit of romance and fun in their daily lives, right? Thank you so much for following along until the end.